I am Ruweri Flynn, 70 years old, widower. I built a landscaping company with my back and my knees and sold it before the surgeries started. I live in Greenwich, Connecticut, where the hedges are high and people whisper on next door like it is a parish bulletin. I am the father of one son, Kellen, 36, who runs a restaurant with my support and my name on the original paperwork. I dress plain, navy blazer, polished brown shoes, a small leather folder in my left hand. Inside a trust summary, a codicil draft, and the operating agreement for an LLC, I still control. I like order. I like things that close with a snap. The wedding sits on a bluff above the water, the country club shining like a boat. White chairs, silver napkin rings, a tent big enough to park a plane. Someone has placed my name at a table too close to the band speakers. I move the card to a quieter chair. No one stops me. Before the vows, the microphones are open for toasts. Kellen's college friends puff themselves up and read from their phones. One of them holds a glass too near his mouth and the feedback squeals. They laugh and nudge him on. Then he reads a screenshot from their group chat, a message my son sent at midnight. Old man lives on $5 in tips from our neighbors, it says. He is basically a next-door beggar. The tent goes still. A few people titter. Kellen grins like a boy who has stolen apples and not been caught. He lifts his glass toward me. Cheers to $5, he says. Cheers to a man who never paid a bill in full. I look down at my phone. A push alert blinks. My bank confirms an escrow hold I placed that morning, $17,800, the planner's next tranche frozen. Next to it, another alert from the operating account of our restaurant, attempted wire to a vendor at dawn flagged for review. The leather folder warms in my hand. I stand. I do not raise my voice. I walk to the front where the band is tuned to somebody's idea of romance. The event planner rushes toward me, her tablet clutched like a life preserver. Sir, we're about to begin the processional. I nod. The process will take a moment longer. I ask the sound man for his spare microphone. He hesitates until the club manager, who knows my name from checks I have written for charity auctions, nods. I take the microphone, the leather folder tucked under my arm. The screen at the back of the tent is still connected to the slideshow. A minute from now, it will show more than sunsets. My name is Ruweri Flynn, I say. I am the father of the groom. I am also the holder of 51% of the restaurant's LLC. The trust that owns that interest is valued at approximately $2,700,000. I do not say that to boast. I say it so there is no confusion about who paid which bills and who can stop them. Silence multiplies like rabbits. I lift a small silver key fob, the kind that opens smart locks. This is the club's service gate fob on loan. Watch the screen. The slideshow blinks. A short video appears black and white from the ring device at the club's side entrance. A man in a tuxedo pockets a plain envelope from the donations tray for the neighborhood's tree fund, the same fund I have chaired for 3 years. His face is clear. He looks like my son because he is my son. People shift in their chairs. The tent is suddenly filled with cloth against cloth. I lift a second object, a printed bank notice with a timestamp and a deposit amount that matches the fund committee's shortage from last weekend, $570 written in ink by the teller. Then I hold up a single page from our HOA. The header is bland. The body states the complaint and who was seen by 2 residents leaving the community room with an envelope at 11:48 in the morning. I put the papers back in the folder. The leather creaks. It is a small, satisfying sound. Kellen finds his voice. You hacked something, he says loud, trying to sound amused. Old men and their gadgets. It is not what it looks like. Everything is not what it looks like, I say. That is why we use paper. The event planner whispers near the bar, panic in her eyes. I can feel the room tilting toward chaos, people pulling out phones, the screen humming with its own electricity. So I finish what I came to do. This morning, I instructed the bank to place an escrow hold on the next wedding payment, I say. $17,800 will not move until we complete a review of the vendor wires made by my son from the restaurant account. There will be no open bar expansion, no last-minute tent extension, and no glitter cannons, because grown men do not shoot confetti from tubes when they owe their neighbors an apology. The laughter is quick and then strangled. You could cut it with a butter knife and serve it with the fish course. Kellen takes a step forward, correcting his cufflink. You are making a scene, he says. You have wanted this moment your whole life. You want everyone to see you. Congratulations. I prefer not to be seen, I say. I prefer my name to be pronounced correctly when it appears on documents. The club manager clears a path. A woman in a navy dress with a neat bun, enters carrying a leather satchel. Her stamp is tucked into a small zippered pouch. The notary. I invited her at breakfast. She offered me an appointment next week. I asked for today. I like closure, I said. She agreed. She wears sensible heels. My folder opens on the nearest cocktail table. The codicil glows white beneath the tent lights. I place a yellow tab where signatures go. The notary lays out her journal. A cousin gasps like a kettle boiling. A bridesmaid whispers what is a codicil, and another says extra will stuff, which, while inelegant, will do. I look to the back of the tent where the screen now holds still. The Ring video's last frame, my son's hand. That familiar scar along the thumb from a childhood bike fall waits like a fingerprint. But that is not the important part, I say. The important part is that a man who wants to be a husband should know the weight of his own name and the cost of breaking it. I turn to Saskia, the bride. She is pale and very still, like a lace pedestal. Her mother grips her elbow. There will be time to speak privately, I say gently. For now, the vendors will be paid for what they have done so far and nothing beyond. The escrow is frozen. The next steps are simple: a trustee review, a brief conversation with the HOA, and a visit to the county clerk to tidy a small lien your fiancé neglected to mention. Kellen spits a word I will not repeat in a club with linen napkins. He points at my phone. This is revenge because I told the truth, he says. You are cheap. You are the $5 man. I almost smile. I am the $5 man, I say. That is why I still have 2,700,000 reasons not to be rushed. I shift the microphone to my left hand and place the folder beside the notary's book. The metal stamp sits there like a small moon. The codicil will be signed by witnesses from both sides of the aisle because fairness keeps a family from burning down its own house. I can feel the tent breathe. Now I do the thing the internet expects because even old men adapt. I glance at the camera the videographer is holding. The red light stares back. Would you freeze a wedding payment if your child mocked you in public? I ask, voice steady. Tell me yes or no in the comments. Tell me where you are watching from, and subscribe if you believe character should balance the books. In the pause that follows, a gull cries over the water. Somewhere outside the tent, a golf cart beeps as it reverses. Every story of money is the same story of respect wearing a different suit. But what they did not know, I add, was that I brought one more page. I touch the second document under the codicil. It is not the will. It is not the trust instrument. It is the operating agreement of the LLC, with the clause that matters highlighted in yellow. A clause about removal for cause. A clause about votes and what constitutes a quorum when a managing member acts to protect the business from reputational harm. I close the folder. Enough for one day. The band played something cheerful, the kind of tune you hear at every country club wedding, yet the sound felt distant, like it belonged to a different evening. I returned to my seat after speaking, the leather folder resting against my thigh, and I noticed the space around me had grown wider. People shifted their chairs ever so slightly, the way diners do when someone coughs too loudly in a restaurant. I poured a little water into the glass in front of me and drank slowly. No one raised their glass back. The tent still buzzed, but the noise was different now. A hum under the surface, voices caught between pity and gossip. I heard a bridesmaid whisper, "Did you see that?" He froze the whole thing. Another replied, "My uncle tried something like that once with a probate case. It destroyed the family." They spoke as if I were already gone. I looked at my son across the aisle. He leaned close to his groomsman, his face red, but he was smiling, the thin smile of a man who knows a performance is better than silence. He patted his pocket as if reassuring himself that his phone was still there. Then I realized why they lived on their phones, all of them. A cousin, barely 20, slipped toward me with her screen tilted so only I could see. "You should know, sir," she whispered. On the glass was a screenshot from a group chat titled, "Last Night Legends." My son's name sat at the top. The message was short. "Push it on the old man. He can't prove a thing. We'll make him the thief, then toast to freedom." Underneath, his friends added laughing emojis. One wrote, $5 Flynn. The girl held the phone like it was dangerous. I nodded, returned it to her hand, and folded my napkin on the table. The cloth was heavy, monogrammed with the club's crest. I smoothed it once, twice, the way I used to smooth invoices before signing them. Then another guest approached, this time a man from the bride's side. He carried his tablet awkwardly as though afraid to be noticed. "Sir," he said, "I am in the wedding group email. I thought you might want to see this." He tapped the screen. There it was, an email from Kellen to the planner written 3 days earlier. "Move the escrow funds now. Dad has no access. We'll cover it later. Do not loop him in." The figure matched my alert exactly $17,800. I thanked the man and returned to my chair. Around me, glasses clinked silverware, scraped plates, and the champagne kept flowing. People pretended to laugh louder than before, as though more volume could drown out what had just happened. I let them. Sometimes silence is the sharpest tool. The planner hurried past her tablet, vibrating with new messages. Her face was pale, her steps too quick. The bride's mother whispered something sharp into her ear, and the planner nodded with the obedience of someone who fears invoices more than conflict. The scent of roast beef drifted from the kitchen, rich and heavy, but my appetite had gone. I picked up my glass of champagne and turned it slowly. Tiny bubbles clung to the rim like witnesses reluctant to speak. Across the table, a neighbor from the homeowners association glanced away when our eyes met. I remembered the $300 fine last spring for trash bins left at the curb. Kellen had cursed the HOA in front of everyone, but I had paid it quietly. He never thanked me. I set the glass down, folded my hands, and listened. The speeches resumed. A groomsman lifted his paper and made a joke about restaurant margins. People laughed too quickly, their eyes darting toward me and then away. It was the laugh of people who want to belong to whichever side wins. Inside my jacket pocket, the codicil draft rested, edges crisp. I touched it with 2 fingers, just enough to remind myself it was there. Paper does not tremble, even when people do. I thought of the nights alone in my kitchen, the kettle hissing on the stove, the Ring device blinking as neighbors passed. I had grown used to solitude. Age does that. It folds silence into your skin. Yet being erased in a crowd, erased by your own son, that carves deeper than solitude. The bride's brother, a young man with a clean tie and anxious eyes, approached my table. "Mr. Flynn," he said quietly, "I don't know all the details, but what you did up there, freezing the payment, it shook people. Half admire it, half are afraid. Either way, they're watching." He left before I could reply. I leaned back. The band began another song, this one slower, and couples stepped onto the dance floor. Kellen tried to pull Saskia forward, but she hesitated. Her eyes flicked to me, then to her mother. She stayed put. My son danced alone, his grin stretched thin, his cufflink loose. I remembered my own wedding decades earlier in a church without air conditioning. No escrow, no codicils, no notaries, just vows and cheap suits. Yet even then I knew money as the quiet guest at every ceremony. The night deepened. Lights along the tent's edge glowed amber. I raised my water glass instead of champagne. My voice stayed inside, but my thoughts were clear. They think this is about embarrassment. It is not. It is about stewardship. I glanced at the videographer's red light again. Audiences live in those lenses now. They will see not only the insult, but the documents, the email, the group chat, the truth. I tapped the folder once more. But what they didn't know, I whispered to myself, was that I had already called the notary this morning. She was here waiting, heels clicking on marble stamp ready. Paper would speak soon. I turned back to the camera with a small, dry smile. "If you've ever been pushed aside by your own family, tell me in the comments," I said, voice low but steady. "Let's see how many of us know this feeling." The night air crept in through the flaps of the tent, cool against my face, a reminder that the world outside went on indifferent to the quarrels of families. Inside, though, every glance was heavy, every whisper a spark. I sat with my hands folded over the leather folder, the weight of it like a stone, and I let the silence grow. Kellen tried to hold court with his groomsmen, speaking louder than necessary. "My father doesn't understand business," he said. "He barely knows how to open an app. He thinks he can hold escrow forever, but the vendors will be paid. They always are." His voice carried further than he realized. People heard. They frowned. Still, they sipped their champagne. A waiter leaned close and placed a folded napkin beside me as if refilling a drink. Inside the fold was a slip of paper. On it in neat handwriting was a note. "Check the HOA report. Page 2. The waiter vanished before I could ask his name. I slid the paper into the folder. Later in the coat room, where the staff bustled in and out, I opened the folder and spread the documents across a bench. The HOA report sat near the top. Page 2 confirmed what I already knew, but had not shown an account of funds missing from the community tree program, with 2 witnesses naming Kellen at the mailbox. The amount was precise, $570. Small, but it was the stone that started the avalanche. I returned to the tent, carrying that page as though it were a menu. Nobody noticed at first. People were busy posing for photographs, holding their glasses at angles designed for Instagram. But I saw Saskia's brother notice the heading, saw him nudge his mother. Their eyes tightened. The videographer's camera swiveled. I knew what was coming next, so I let it. I stepped near the stage and handed the page to the club manager. "Read it," I said. His brow furrowed, his lips moved as he scanned the words. Then he nodded, his face pale. He gave the page back. That was enough. I did not need to read it aloud. As I tucked it away, another sound chimed a notification on my phone. A bank alert. At 11:48 this morning, a deposit of $570 had entered Kellen's debit account. The number was identical to the missing HOA funds. Numbers tell their own story. I stared at the screen until the digits imprinted themselves in my mind. When I looked up, I saw movement near the back of the tent. A cousin was whispering with the notary I had invited. She held her satchel close as though guarding something fragile. The cousin pointed toward me. The notary inclined her head. She would wait until I called. I sat again, poured water, and listened. A bridesmaid spoke loudly about the color of flowers, trying to steer attention back to safer ground, but whispers cut through. "Did you see the video, the HOA note, 570? People wanted the story to fade, but it was now louder than the music. Kellen approached me, hands tight at his sides. He leaned close. "Stop this," he said. "You're humiliating me." I looked at him, really looked, the face still young, but already lined, the cufflink loose, the wine stain on his shirt cuff. "You humiliated yourself," I replied quietly. "I am only showing the receipts." He tried to smile, but it faltered. He walked back toward his friends, whispering harshly. I let him go. Instead, I pulled another page from the folder, a quitclaim deed I had prepared months earlier. I placed it on the table and smoothed the crease. It stated clearly that the small studio apartment I had once transferred to my son could revert to the trust upon evidence of fraud. Fraud was no longer a rumor. The notary approached at last, her sensible heels clicking against the floorboards of the tent. She set her satchel on the cocktail table. Metal touched wood. The stamp gleamed under the lights. A hush fell. People leaned in without meaning to. Even the band softened its chords. "This codicil," I said, opening the folder, "will be signed tonight. It will state simply that any heir proven to have defrauded the community or the family will be excluded from distribution. Witnesses are here. The notary is here. Paper will not lie." Gasps rippled, sharp and uneven. Someone muttered. "At the wedding," another voice replied. "Where else? When else?" I lifted the folder, showed the documents briefly. Ring stills, HOA report, bank alert, quitclaim deed, and then closed it. Leather creaked. My voice stayed calm. "But what they did not know," I said, eyes on the camera, "was that this is only the beginning." The tent lights glowed warmer as the evening pressed on, but the air itself grew colder. You could feel it in the way people shifted their weight, how laughter thinned to a nervous thread. The band strummed idly, filling the silence with notes no one cared to follow. A wedding is meant to be a promise. Tonight it was an inventory. I stood again, the leather folder under my arm. The notary was now at my side, satchel open, stamp ready. She had the look of someone about to notarize a mortgage, not a family feud. Her calm only made the scene sharper. I walked toward the stage where the projector still hummed. The slideshow of childhood photos had ended hours ago, but the equipment remained waiting. "Play the file," I told the club manager. He hesitated. Then he tapped the laptop. The screen lit up. The Ring video filled the backdrop, black and white, grainy, the side entrance of the community building. An envelope lifted, a hand withdrawing, the scar on the thumb, plain as daylight. My son's face tilted toward the camera for an instant, caught in its quiet mercy. The crowd gasped as one body. A glass dropped, shattering against the dance floor. Saskia's father whispered something sharp into her mother's ear. My son lunged forward, shouting, "This is illegal. This is doctored. This is..." But the audio from the clip played faint but audible, the latch, the scrape, and his voice muttering, "They'll never trace it." I raised my hand. Enough. The video froze on his face. The projector light painted him larger than life across the canvas, every guest staring at his image. He shrank on the stage even as his shadow grew. I opened the folder and placed 2 sheets on the podium, the HOA report and the bank alert. "Here," I said. A complaint filed, 2 witnesses named. And here a bank deposit at 11:48, $570, the same figure missing from the fund. Numbers, signatures, dates. They do not blush. They do not forget. Kellen tried to laugh, but it came out jagged. "So what, $570? You're burning a wedding down for pocket change." I looked at him. $570 is small. But if a man steals 5, he will steal 5,000. And if he mocks 5, he will mock 5 million. The number is not the crime. The name Island. A murmur rippled through the guests. The bride's brother pulled out his phone, scrolling quickly. Then he looked up pale. "It's already on Nextdoor," he said. Someone posted the clip. "It's trending." The tent filled with the glow of screens as people checked their phones, buzzing, vibrating the quiet chorus of 20 alerts. The story had left the tent and entered the town. It would not return. Saskia stepped back from Kellen. Her dress shimmered under the lights, but her face was drained. "Is it true?" she asked. Her voice was soft, but the microphone caught it. Everyone heard. Kellen reached for her hand. She let it hang by her side. He clenched his jaw, turned back to me, and spat. "You planned this. You wanted to humiliate me." I placed my palm on the folder. "No," I said, steady. "I wanted to correct the record. You chose the humiliation." Then I turned back to the guests. "There will be no additional payments to vendors tonight. The escrow is frozen. Until a trustee review is complete, all contracts are paused. If you need reimbursement, contact the bank. The trust will honor what is honest and nothing more." Gasps again. The planner swayed as though she might faint. The band stopped altogether, their instruments hanging silent. A bridesmaid whispered, "Is he really cutting off the whole event?" Another hissed back, "He can," he said, escrow. "That means the money's locked." I let them speak. The truth was already in their mouths. Finally, I faced the videographer's red light. "Tell me, those of you watching this later, if a man lies with his own father's name, should he still inherit that father's estate? Comment below. We will see how many of you think character outweighs ceremony." The projector screen still showed my son's frozen face, hand in the envelope, scar along the thumb. Bigger than vows, bigger than roses. "But what they didn't know," I said, closing the folder with a firm snap, "was that I had one more document ready to sign tonight." The tent smelled of roses and roast beef, but underneath it all was the scent of fear. Guests pressed their napkins to their mouths, not from hunger, but to mask whispers. The notary stood by the cocktail table, now her journal open, her pen steady. Her composure drew eyes. Everyone knew something formal was about to unfold. I laid the codicil draft flat, the yellow tabs marking where signatures belonged. Paper on linen. It looked out of place at a wedding, yet perfectly at home in my hands. I tapped the page once. "This," I said, "is a codicil. A simple amendment. It removes any heir proven to defraud the community or the family from my estate. Tonight, witnesses stand ready. The notary stands ready. So do I." Gasps fluttered through the tent like startled birds. A cousin clutched her pearls, an old gesture in a modern room. Kellen's face twisted. "You cannot rewrite your will at my wedding," he shouted. "That is insane." I glanced at the notary. She raised her brows, unbothered. "Sir," she said, her voice calm but firm, "you can execute a codicil at any time, provided the conditions of law are met. Tonight qualifies." She pressed the stamp into her ink pad. The quiet thud echoed louder than the band. I gestured to two volunteers. One was a neighbor who had long overseen the HOA's tree fund. The other, a distant cousin from the bride's side, chosen for neutrality. They approached hesitantly, but they signed. Their pens left dark strokes across white paper, strokes that could not be unsaid. The notary leaned down, sealing each signature with her stamp. The sound of the press metal against paper was a punctuation mark no one could ignore. My son lunged forward. "You can't do this. You'll ruin me." I looked at him. "No, Kellen. You did that yourself when you chose to blame me for theft you committed. I am only making the paper match the truth." A bridesmaid muttered, "Is this legal?" Another guest answered, "It is if the notary is here. This is real." I let their voices rise. People needed to explain it to themselves. That way they would remember. Then came the second blow. I reached into the folder and lifted another sheet. "This," I said, "is the quitclaim deed for the studio apartment I once transferred to Kellen. It carries a condition: if fraud appears, the property reverts to the trust. Fraud has appeared. Tonight I reclaim it." The crowd stirred like a wave struck by wind. Saskia's father leaned close to his daughter, murmuring too low for me to hear. Her eyes filled, but she did not move toward Kellen. I folded the deed neatly and placed it atop the codicil. The notary marked it with her journal, her hand precise. Screens lit again. Phones buzzed with notifications. Someone whispered, "It's already on Instagram." A video of the signing. The red glow of the videographer's camera confirmed it. This moment had left the tent and entered the wider world. Kellen slammed his fist against the podium, rattling the microphone. "You'll regret this. You're an old man with nothing but paper." I smiled faintly. Paper built the world you live in. Deeds, trusts, escrows, even your marriage license tonight. Paper will also correct what you tried to stain. The guests drew in closer, not away. They wanted to see history inked before them. Some recorded, some whispered, some simply stared. I turned to the camera. Would you in my place sign away your own son for the sake of the truth, I asked. Comment control if you would protect the estate. Comment compassion if you would forgive. The world deserves to answer. I closed the folder once more. The codicil, the quitclaim deed, the signatures all sealed. But what they didn't know, I said softly, my eyes still on my son, was that I controlled more than property. I controlled the operating account of his business, and tonight I would use it. The night had turned cold, though the heaters inside the tent hummed. Guests clutched their shawls tighter, not because of the air, but because of what they had seen. A codicil signed a deed, reclaimed a father cutting his son from inheritance in real time. And yet the story was not done. I remained at the podium, the leather folder still under my arm. My son believes paper is powerless, I said evenly. He forgets that paper commands banks, locks, and doors. I set the folder down, opened it, and drew out the operating agreement of our restaurants LLC. The highlighted clause glowed under the light. I held it up so the videographer's lens could catch every word. 51%, I said. That is what I hold. And with that majority, I may remove any managing member whose actions endanger the reputation of the business. The crowd murmured a tide of recognition. They understood what was happening. Business shares were no less binding than vows. I tapped my phone once. A bank alert appeared almost instantly. Transfer complete, it read. I had moved the restaurant's operating reserve $83,000 into a trustee-controlled account. My son's access card would find nothing. I raised the phone so the guests could see the glow of the notification. Gasps scattered through the tent. Saskia's brother whispered. He just shut him out of his own company. The planner clutched her tablet as though it might burn her hands. Kellen stepped forward, face red, voice ragged. You cannot do that, he shouted. I built that restaurant. I hired the staff. I sweated every hour in that kitchen. I looked at him calmly, and I backed every loan. I signed every guarantee. Without me, there would be no ovens to sweat in. You were a chef, not an owner. The paper made you an owner. And tonight, the paper makes you something else. His hand fumbled for his phone. He tapped furiously, then froze. A small sound left his throat, half groan, half disbelief. His access was gone. The crowd saw it in his eyes before he admitted it. I revoked your login, I said simply. The operating account now rests under trustee supervision. You will cook only if the trustee allows it. Whispers turned into open commentary now. Guests leaned toward one another. He shut his son out of the business. At his own wedding, with one click. The bride's father stepped closer to his daughter, his arm a shield. Saskia looked at Kellen as though she had never seen him before. Did you steal from the neighbors? She asked, voice trembling. Did you lie to me? He tried to answer, but the silence after the question was longer than any response could cover. I pressed on. I have also arranged a lien check at the county clerk's office. The result is clear. An outstanding debt attached to my son's apartment. He concealed it. That lien will follow him until resolved. Not the trust, not me. I paused, let the words hang. When a man hides liens and mocks $5, he reveals himself. And tonight I reveal him. Phones buzzed again. Another wave of alerts. Someone announced, it's viral now. The clip of the bank transfer is everywhere. I turned back to the crowd. There will be no more secrets. Escrow holds the wedding funds. The quitclaim returns the apartment. The codicil cuts the heir. The LLC operates without him. And the lien sits where it belongs on the man who earned it. Kellen's knees seemed to falter. He gripped the edge of the stage, sweat shining on his temple. You destroyed me, he whispered. I shook my head. You destroyed yourself. I only opened the ledger. The band had long since gone silent. The tent was still filled only with the sound of distant water against the shore. I looked once more at the videographer's camera. If a father controls 51%, should he use it when his son drags the family name through the mud, I asked. Comment control or compassion. Tell me what kind of world you believe in. Then I closed the folder, tucked it under my arm, and returned to my chair. The revenge was not a shout nor a fist. It was a sequence of documents signed and sealed. Paper had moved faster than blood. But what they didn't know, I murmured, was that the consequences would ripple beyond this tent. By the time the cake was wheeled out, no one looked at it. The white tears, sugar flowers, and silver ribbon had been meant to crown the night, but they stood ignored. a monument to a celebration already cracked. People huddled in corners, their phones glowing like lanterns in a storm. Every buzz was another share, another clip of my words, another replay of Kellen's hand caught on the Ring video. The story had escaped. It lived now on Nextdoor, on Instagram Reels, even in the quiet gossip threads of the community Facebook group. A neighbor had already posted Flynn family wedding turned courtroom. Codicil signed mid-toast. HOA theft exposed. Replies piled up like autumn leaves. I sipped water, not champagne, and watched the room churn. A bridesmaid muttered, "My credit score is better than his now," another replied. "It won't matter. No lender touches a man with fraud on record." Their words carried. Kellen heard them. His shoulders curled inward, as if to hide. Saskia's family drew tight around her. Her father held a folded printout someone had forwarded the county clerk's lien notice already. He waved it like proof. "You married into debt and deceit," he told his daughter. She stood pale as linen, her ring heavy on her finger. The planner tried to rally. "Shall we cut the cake?" she asked weakly. No one moved. No one sang. Instead, a guest shouted, "Check the HOA report," and laughter rippled cruel and sharp. Then came the sound of glass against wood. Kellen slammed a champagne flute down, cracking its stem. "Enough," he shouted. "You all think you're judges. This is a wedding, not a courtroom." His voice broke at the last word. No one answered. Silence judged better than words. My phone buzzed again. Another bank alert. The escrow account had returned a vendor refund, $300 from the florist marked services rendered to date. Proof that even flowers had boundaries when paper spoke. I placed the phone on the table where others could see the glow. Whispers rose again. The HOA president herself approached then, an older woman in a sequined jacket. She held a clipboard under her arm. "Mr. Flynn," she said loudly enough for guests to hear, "we've reviewed the fund shortage. With your evidence, we'll file formal charges. Thank you for protecting the community." She pivoted heels, clicking, leaving Kellen in her wake. His face drained. He muttered curses, too low for the microphone, but loud enough for the first row. He tried to reach for Saskia's hand again. She stepped back. Her veil brushed her shoulder like a flag of retreat. Guests shifted chairs, but not to dance. They wanted vantage points, better angles for their recordings. The event had transformed from wedding to tribunal, each screen another juror. I rose once more slowly, the folder still at my side. "This is the consequence of mockery," I said. "Not $5, but 570. Not one insult, but years of arrogance. Tonight the world has seen and paper has answered." I looked around the tent, into the cameras, into the faces of strangers who had become witnesses. If you think the father went too far, say so. If you think he simply balanced the books, say that too. Either way, history is inked. The cake remained untouched. The champagne grew warm. Outside headlights glimmered as cars began to leave, a wedding dissolving before dessert. I sat again, calm as stone. But what they didn't know, I whispered, was that one more chapter still waited the resolution no one could deny. The last of the music faded with the night. By then, half the guests had slipped away their dresses, brushing the damp grass, their shoes clicking across the parking lot. The cake stood untouched, a sweet monument to promises already spoiled. I remained at my table leather folder, resting on my lap, the weight of its steady final. Kellen sat near the bar, shoulders slumped, phone dark in his hand. The groom had become a bystander at his own wedding. Saskia no longer stood beside him. She was across the tent, her family surrounding her like sentries. The veil that once promised beginnings now looked like distance. She did not look at him, not once. I watched quietly, not with triumph, but with the calm of a man who has lived long enough to know the difference between noise and verdict. The verdict had been delivered not by me, but by paper, by numbers, by the simple way truth settles once it is written down. The notary closed, her journal slid her stamp back into its pouch and gave me a small nod before leaving. Her work was complete. The codicil stood, signed the quitclaim deed, reclaimed the LLC, secured the escrow, frozen. Nothing loud, nothing violent, just documents, each one a brick in the wall between deceit and inheritance. Guests still whispered. One woman leaned to her husband, $2,700,000 in trust, gone from the son's reach. Another replied, he mocked $5 and lost millions. Their voices carried just enough for Kellen to hear. He pressed his palms to his temples, eyes shut as if he could will the sound away. I lifted my glass of water, the bubbles gone, and spoke once more into the stillness. "Money is never just money," I said. "It is memory. It is proof. It is respect written in numbers." My son believed $570 was small. He believed 17,800 in escrow was his by right. He believed 2,700,000 in trust could not be touched. Tonight he learned otherwise. The videographer's camera light blinked, still recording. I leaned slightly forward, letting the lens catch the lines on my face. If you think the father made the right choice, comment right. If you think another way could have saved this family, share your idea. Let the world decide whether control or compassion rules. I closed the folder one last time, its snap crisp as a gavel. I rose-buttoned my blazer and left the tent. Behind me, voices swelled again, but they were no longer mine to hear. Outside, the night air was clean. Stars hung above the water, steady and different. I walked toward my car, the notary's stamp echoing faintly in my mind. A family had tried to erase me in public. Instead, I had written myself into permanence. At the edge of the parking lot, I paused, breathing in the salt wind. In the end, I murmured, paper speaks longer than pride.